I'm not a comedy act, so if you're expecting stand-up humour, you might want to leave now. The other thing I'm not, though, there will be funny stories in it, don't worry. The other thing I'm not, and I should probably say it before we start, is I don't do philosophy kind of in a Radio 4 way. I don't resolve it into kind of nice little problems that you'll worry about. Why? I think that'll become clear as we go through. The real thing I do starts at the other end, you see. It starts with a question. How on earth is a philosophy book ever written? I mean, if you've ever read Being in Time or Pretty Good Pure Reason, they're very big. What was inspiring the thinkers? And if you go back into their biographies, you get these fascinating tales of how Kant, aged 40, thinking he had done it all, he'd solved every problem, read Hume, suddenly realised here was an argument he couldn't counter, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't do his normal stuff. He had to sit and read and reread Hume, and he had to think an argument to counter him. Or you get another story about how in old age Plato described Aristotle as his foal, the man who kept on drinking from his knowledge but kept on kicking him. Remember, this is a man who spent his life writing about his own teacher, Socrates. And that, I think, gets you right to the heart of what makes, for me, philosophy beautiful and special. Philosophers' heads, you see, are full of very loud, very stroppy muses. Muses with boots on. Muses that are other philosophers' ideas, kicking them. And I suppose I see my stand-up show as giving you kind of a glimpse of that. Giving you a glimpse of the noisy, chaotic workshop that is a philosopher's mind. And I'm going to do it, all the philosophers today, on a single theme. I call this show Standing Up for Freedom, because freedom is worth standing up for. And I understand it this way, I suppose. That we live in a society where we're told we're free, and yet we're ignoring something. We're ignoring where freedom came from. That actually, for most of the history of humanity, the idea that a state were free and an individual were free, and free in the same moment, was thought to be almost an oxymoron. It was a contradiction internally. And that was, of course, the point. You see, I understand our relationship with freedom. Like we're some kind of middle-aged couple. We've been together for about 30 years, and we've got a bit tired of each other, and we take each other for granted. And all the things we used to find exciting have become just nasty. So we're now worried about paradoxes about free speech, and whether the freedom of speech impinges on the freedom to act, and where the freedom to spend money becomes the right to oppress other people. And all the paradoxes that make freedom so worthwhile, that initially made it so exciting. The fact that they could not be resolved. The fact that they inspired you to think and to rethink. We've lost sight of how beautiful they are. And I suppose I see this show as an attempt to go back into the history of philosophy, to show you these ideas at the moment of their thinking, to make it all feel difficult, and yet somehow, in an act of reconciliation, to make that difficulty itself worthwhile. That's my explanation. But how do you do that? Well, how I usually do that, and I'll do some of it today, is to go backwards, to start with a modern problem, and with two thinkers who are often thought almost to be the enemies of freedom, but I would argue we're trying to think it in a different way, and gradually go back and back and back, back to the first men who gave us our current version of freedom, and then right back to Greece, and the first great blood sacrifice that gave the world a very strong idea of freedom in BC 399. So where to start?